All right. And just starting our recording here, we'd love just an opportunity this morning to say good morning to everyone. If you could turn on your camera, give a wave, and then we'll ask if cameras can go off as we will be recording this session. So wonderful to see everyone this morning.
It's so great to see everyone. Thanks so much for joining us. And we know that you have a busy day today, and so we'll just jump right in and get started.
Absolutely. So just a note that this session, along with any of the panel discussions that are happening today, are recorded. They're in the Symposium site, and we will share that. And as Ken mentioned, this is our 6th annual Collaborative Response Conference / Symposium. It's been the last 3 years that we've moved into this online space for our symposium. 3 years prior to that, we had in person, and really looking forward to return to opportunities to see people in person once again. So we do want to start off today with our land acknowledgement.
So we acknowledge that we're on Treaty 6 territory, a traditional meeting grounds, gathering place and traveling route of the Cree, Saulteaux, Blackfoot, Dene, and Nakota Sioux, and the traditional homeland of the Métis. We acknowledge all the many Indigenous footsteps that have marked these lands for centuries. We also are aware that many of you are coming from other treaty areas and Métis zones in Alberta and across Canada.
It's definitely the time of the year when we really pay attention to the land and what it means to us as we see the green starting to come out, the shift in time, and just that want and need to be outside and a part of nature once again. So really important that we take time to honor and acknowledge the land.
We, in our busy days, we have the privilege of living nearby this lake that you see in the picture there. And in our busy day, we often take a few minutes at lunchtime to go for a walk, and it's just renewing and refreshing. And we're so privileged to be here.
So we see some familiar names and faces out in the crowd. Great to have you here. For those that don't know us, we are Kurtis and Lorna Houston, lead learners and co-founders of Jigsaw Learning, and work across this great province of Alberta and beyond, supporting schools and districts with their collaborative response efforts. And super excited to engage in 3 days of live learning, but also in all the pre-recorded learning that's been a part of the symposium as well, related to collaborative response.
And yes, we are Oilers fans. So go Oilers, go.
Except I recently lost a bet, and in the closing address, I will be sporting a bit of an ugly sweater as part of that wager. So we do need to start off and thank the amazing team that we have, even though we are the ones kicking off and sharing some initial thoughts here to start off our symposium, the live portion of the symposium. This wouldn't happen without our amazing team of volunteers that are featured there in the pictures. Thank you so much to Lana, Nancy, Marilyn, Tanya, Colette, Jennifer, Nadine, and Barbara for all that you've done to support things in the background and ensure that this symposium is able to occur.
They've been such a wonderful help and have worked hard on this symposium since October, I think.
Yeah, it's been a long time coming. Absolutely. So we wanted to start off with just a few reminders in relation to the symposium, and then we're going to kick off with some ideas and thoughts related to collaborative structures and processes. So just a note that the live sessions that are happening during this week are only part of the symposium. There is a large number of pre-recorded sessions that have been developed over last year and this year. With your registration for the symposium, you would have received access to a membership space that has all of our 2021 recordings as well. So there is a very, very large video library to be able to access. With the pre-recorded sessions, we've intentionally kept those to 10 to 15 minute recordings so that they are quickly and easily digestible and able to share with staff teams as well. Just a note, we have created a reflection organizer, and we'll include this in the chat window. just one moment here.
The reflection organizer allows you to take a quick look at the components of each piece, those essential elements of collaborative response, and their criteria, and for you to be able to reflect on, do we have this in place? And perhaps there's absolutely it's in place, or perhaps there's a few things that you still need to consider. So it allows you that opportunity, but in addition, we then have linked all of the recordings, not linked, but we've listed all of the recordings that are available that could help you in that specific area.
Absolutely. So please utilize that as a tool to help guide as you engage in the different pre-recorded sessions as well. We also then have our live sessions that are happening today, tomorrow, and Thursday. Just a note that the Zoom links are available in that symposium site. Each day we'll send out an email that gives you an overview of what to expect from the live sessions. Just a note that we will be recording the morning welcoming addresses and the panel discussions and posting those up in the symposium site, but the discussion forums will not be recorded. Those will be live, although there are Padlets that have been created for those discussion forums that are happening at 12 and 4 o'clock for sharing resources, questions, and comments. So if you're able to attend those live, that's fantastic. If not, the Padlet should be able to capture some of the thoughts and ideas that are there.
In addition, we have an opportunity for you to be able to consult with one of our team, so that if there's specific questions that you have about your journey as you've been going along implementing collaborative response, you have that chance to be able to talk through some of your questions for your site or for your district. So you can sign up for one of those consultations as well.
We do have to thank our sponsors that have supported the event. So thank you so much to Brightwire, Scholastic Education, Forum Law, Jigsaw Collaborative Solutions, Pi Business, Corwin, and Intellimedia. We also will be, there are door prizes that have been contributed by a number of the sponsors. Those will get drawn during the symposium, and we will be emailing and tweeting out. We'll also feature it on the symposium site, the winners. We do have two special door prizes from Intellimedia, an Apple Watch and a Galaxy Samsung tablet that will be drawn during the closing address, and you need to be there in person to be able to win, or virtually in person to be able to win. That's happening Thursday at 4 o'clock. So thank you so much for Intellimedia supporting that. So what we want to be able to do in each one of these mornings is take one of the foundational components of collaborative response and dive a little bit into the why. So just a note that we'll kick off each day, and then it's intended that the sessions during the day focus on that particular component, with our closing address then happening Thursday at 4 p.m. For us. And as mentioned, the door prizes that Intellimedia has provided must be present to be able to win those. So today we'd like to thank our Jigsaw Collaborative Solutions. Jigsaw Collaborative Solutions is a subsidiary company for Jigsaw Learning, and they are sponsoring as a keynote sponsor today. We are super excited that our premier software, the WeCollab, is just in its release of an updated version. We have added a number of new features that we're really excited about. There are a number of recordings that show the features available within that WeCollab system that have been updated with some really impactful features that have been developed. So please learn more at jigsawcollaborativesolutions.ca, and I'll pop that into our chat window here as well. There is also a brochure that is available that can share a little bit more about that newly updated WeCollab system. So thank you so much for Jigsaw Collaborative Solutions sponsoring. And we're excited to introduce Intellimedia tomorrow, who will be our morning keynote sponsor as well.
So we want to start out just to share a message that has become really important to us and really guides the work that we do. And that is, every child deserves a team. And a number of years ago, a lot of years ago, when I was working in a divisional role, I can remember one time specifically where I was asked we were just beginning on the road to exploring what does inclusion look like for our schools and for our classrooms. And I was asked to come to the school board and provide a presentation to them in regards to what is inclusion and what does that look like in our classrooms. And so I remember this very plainly, that as I talked through some of the work that we were doing and some of the things that we were instilling within classrooms and schools across the district, one of the school board members said to me, well, this would be really fantastic to have programming for every individual child in your school. But how do you do that? And I wasn't sure about how to respond, because at that point in time, we really didn't have a response to how do we provide that team for every child in every building, in every school across our system.
So we really want you over the next 3 days to reflect on this statement. How do we ensure that every child is supported by a strong layering of teams and structures within our buildings so that the success of a child is never the responsibility of one single individual? How can we structure and create schools where it is truly a team approach that is instilled throughout the building so that we can maximize the capacity of our teams for the benefit of each and every student within the building? This is the essence of collaborative response, and would like you to just continue to reflect upon how do we actualize this as we walk through over the next 3 days.
We have for years talked about that wraparound type of support that we would provide for every student, but particularly when we are talking about complex needs or specialized needs for individual students. But what if we could provide that wraparound type of support for every child?
So each one of the mornings, we are going to take one of the components and really break down the why. We spend a lot of time talking about the how of collaborative response. The logistics and the pre-recorded sessions are really digging into the how. Do you go about building each of those? Each morning, we want to step back and really highlight what's the important why behind each one of the structures and processes that guide this work. There is a high degree of intentionality in the design, and we really want to take time to talk about the overarching why behind each one of these components. So today, we're going to start in with the collaborative structures and processes. There is a reason why it is the largest puzzle piece, because we feel that it is incredibly important when we set up success for every child.
So we're going to start by sharing a couple of statements that are going to create cognitive dissonance for you, because they really are statements that don't make a lot of sense, but we want to spend some time pulling them apart and having you think deeply on how does this reflect the understanding of what happens in collaborative response.
So reflect upon this statement, the idea that we reduce the numbers of meetings within our school by adding one more. It seems contradictory, but we'd like for you to think about, so how does that look? within our school. We often hear the adage, there's never enough time in schools, and we understand that completely. But when we can be strategic with the layering of the types of meetings and very clear on their purpose, we can actually reduce the amount of time while accomplishing more through a strategic layering.
So when we come in to work with schools, we talk about different types of teams that we create to ensure we have that wraparound that I talked about earlier. But we typically see that collaborative planning in place. We typically see school support team meetings and case consult team meetings in schools, which for many of you, you would name them different things, but we often don't see the collaborative team meeting that you can see here that is highlighted in blue.
So the idea is that each one of these need to be clearly articulated in our school because they each have a different purpose. The collaborative planning is where we're really looking at what are we doing instructionally across a department, across a grade level, across a school for all students. The school support team is when we start to look at students who are requiring supports beyond the classroom. And the case consult is when we focus on one student at a time and wrap around. The collaborative team meeting becomes the space where we're really investigating how could we support many students with additional differentiated strategies, accommodations, and interventions. Lorna often describes the collaborative team meeting as a 2-for-1. Do you want to explain what you mean by that, Lorna?
Yeah, sure. So that collaborative team meeting being 2-for-1 because in one meeting, we are able to support teachers and the practice in their classroom, but at the same time, being able to support the individual needs of students. So that 2-for-1 actually becomes the connecting piece between what happens in the classroom and how we support students on an individual or small group basis. We very intentionally use jigsaw puzzle pieces, clearly because of our business name, but also because the why is connected to how all these pieces fit together. So why we need that collaborative team meeting is because it does create the bridge between collaborative planning and the individualized needs that are being met through the school support team and the case consult team.
So it's not unusual that we see schools when they first introduce the collaborative team meeting actually see more students being brought forward into the school support team conversation or students that are needing individual wraparound support through the case consult. But in time, the introduction of the collaborative team meeting is intended to just build everyone's capacity small steps at a time so that in time, less students are emerging as a focus in the school support team and the case consult. So ideally, what ends up happening is we do reduce the number of conversations about students because of the classroom capacity that is being built over and over again through the collaborative team meeting. And when we think about each one of these layers, it's so incredibly important that we think about structures. I love this picture that comes from our friends at Memorial Composite High School, where they have very, very intentional structures that are developed through things such as norms, roles, pre-meeting organizers. All of those structures help us reinforce how we collaborate at high levels of effectiveness. They often feel mechanical, they feel awkward when first being introduced, but they are so critically important to be able to help us build high functioning teams. Lencioni, in his 5 dysfunctions of teams, talks about what does it look like when we have teams that are working at high levels of impact. We would argue without careful attention to the predictable structures in those layers that we shared previously, we're not able to attend to each one of those observables of a high functioning team. So let's look at what Lencioni sees as 5 attributes of high performing teams.
So for Lencioni, he talks through those 5 levels, knowing that when we create predictable agendas for each layer of collaboration, then we build that organizational trust and consistency across those teams.
So when people can come into those conversations knowing exactly what it's going to look like, it's predictable. We have standard agendas, we've said it, it builds high degrees of trust, organizational trust that's established. When we think about the idea of embracing healthy conflict, we should be able to disagree in these conversations and not come out feeling wounded or accosted within it. When we establish and then reinforce norms, that's what helps us create the conditions for healthy conflict to emerge. When we can clearly articulate, here's the commitments that we will attend to when we come together, and then each time practice. Let's pick one that we will practice. It helps us to continue to build upon a skill set of collaboration.
When we really focus in on those actions that we are committing to throughout the meeting and documenting those, then it really allows us to commit to the work that we are doing and to our students, and also to the things that we're going to try in our classrooms.
We often hear schools say the roles feel a little bit awkward. I'm really good at taking notes and facilitating and watching the time. Why don't I just take all of those on? Why would we share the roles around? And what the roles allow us to do is create distributive leadership and team accountability. So that accept accountability component really helps reinforce that we are all responsible for these conversations being highly productive and impactful.
And then finally, Lencioni speaks to that idea of focusing on results. And for us, allowing that data and evidence to guide our conversations at each layer of team places that unrelenting focus on how do we see improvement? How do we see growth? But we'll talk more about that coming up.
That'll be our focus tomorrow around the data and evidence. So obviously those layers of structure is incredibly important. And we've seen schools that have, and we've seen divisions actually, that have made it very clear what is the purpose of each one of those layers and what types of conversations can we come to expect. Again, creating predictability and trust.
So our second statement that really creates that cognitive dissonance again is that respond to the needs of the students by taking attention off the students. And again, reflecting on that, how does that make sense to you? And how does it play out in collaborative response? Well, teachers have traditionally been commissioned to meet the needs of students in their classroom. We still are.
That hasn't changed.
That mandate hasn't changed, but how do we approach that? How we approach that mandate really has changed. So if we think over the past 10 years or so, we've been making a concerted effort to move to collaborative practice, understanding that we are more effective, more efficient, and more successful when we work together. But that has not come without discomfort. We know that there is an uncomfortable mind shift when we first start engaging in collaborative team meetings.
So when we think about that layer of collaborative team meetings, we often have people when they first come into the work go, oh yeah, we talk about kids too. Well, actually, in the collaborative team meeting, we're not focusing on a single student. A student is allows us to leverage a conversation about practice. We want to move away from, in the collaborative team meeting, focusing on one student and one teacher being on the spot. We know that in the past, it's been comfortable for us to be able to put the focus on a student when we're coming together. It sometimes allows us to deflect the focus off of what we're doing as educators, as leaders, to be able to focus in on what the student is not doing. But how do we reach more students in that small window of time that we have? How do we maximize that time? And it's through the collaborative team meeting that we can actually focus in on many students when we shift the focus to a key issue.
So bringing up students that teachers are concerned about still meets that needs of my responsibility for the students that are in my classroom and that I have a heart for, and I want to be able to meet their needs. So bringing up those students, adding in additional students with similar concerns, and then followed by a collective conversation in which we can surface the expertise that we have in the building that will meet multiple students' needs in multiple classrooms.
So 2 components that we want to focus on before we bring to a close here this morning, as we know everyone has busy schedules ahead of them here today. The first is celebrations. The celebrations are intentionally designed so that we can ask, what did we do that led to that success? It's not enough just to say, I'd like to celebrate all of the students we've seen such growth over the last month. We want to hone in on, are there any specifics, students that we can see? And then we dig into, but what did you do, or what did we do that led to that success? Essentially, what that is doing is having us be able to engage in deeper reflection, which Simon Breakspear would tell us is tantamount to effective growth and of instructional practices when we're able to reflect. But then when we can clearly articulate, what is it that I've done that led to that particular impact, we are building the conditions for enhancing collective efficacy. We know from Hattie's research and Jenny Donahue's continued work around collective efficacy that it has a high effect size in contributing to student achievement. And when we articulate those intentional steps that we as individuals or us as a team have taken, we're really building upon that collective efficacy of the team over and over again. We're reinforcing that what we're doing matters, and we can identify what are the steps we've taken that have led to that success. The celebrations matter.
Reflecting on that impact for ourselves and then building capacity within the team is really about why we do those celebrations.
So now when we come to then talk about a student, when I identify a student who is struggling, that can be an uncomfortable situation. What if somebody's judging what I've done or haven't done? What if somebody asks me to do something that I'm unsure of or I'm not equipped to do? We know that this can be a very vulnerable place for teachers to be in. And Amy Edmondson talks about the importance of psychological safety as a key determinant. The way that we help ensure that people can be vulnerable and open to next steps is when we focus on a key issue. So essentially, trying to be able to say, what's one thing that we want to impact? And then even more importantly, excellent, who else has a student that is surfacing that same key issue? It looks like we're talking about students, but really we're looking at problems of practice and then engaging in a conversation around, so what could we do? It takes the attention off me as a teacher, but to be able to open up a toolbox. It creates what Edmondson calls that psychological safety for us to be able to explore possibilities. And we continue to see teachers that stretch, that start looking for alternative ways and support from one another. Approximately 10 years ago, Google led a project that they termed Project Aristotle, where they tried to determine why are some teams more effective than others. And they began looking at first the demographics of the team. Did it matter the composition, the types, the personalities that were together? And what they actually found out is that the composition mattered little. What did matter was how the team operated together. And they found that the number one piece that allowed teams to become highly impactful was the creation of psychological safety.
And we do that when we set up our teams with consistent and ongoing structures and practices, and creating that place of dependability so that we know that we can trust that our team is going to follow those norms and work together, creating that structure and clarity and purpose in our time together, knowing that we're meeting the needs of students and that we're growing our practice together as a team. And then finally recognizing that, yes, indeed, we have that impact on our students and even across our entire building.
So that collaborative team meeting becomes absolutely essential because it allows our teachers to come together as experts and as learners simultaneously, that we all have expertise to contribute, but I always have something I can take away from that conversation as a next step learning for me. So today, we, during our noon sessions and our time at 4 o'clock, we will be focusing today on collaborative structures and processes. There are panel discussions and discussion forums set up focused on these. We really hope to be able to see you in those different events, and also recognizing that there are a number of pre-recorded sessions related as well. This opening address is being recorded and it will be posted up on our Symposium site, and we'd encourage you to keep this in mind today and Wednesday and Thursday as you're engaging in the live sessions of every child deserving a team, and how do we go about intentionally structuring that? We believe it's through collaborative response.
Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us this morning. And we're really excited to be able to continue this journey with you throughout the next 3 days. And we will be seeing you here and there until Thursday.
Reach out if there's any questions that you have, and we look forward to having you join again tomorrow when we dig into data and evidence. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day and all the best in your learning. Take care. And thank you so much, Ken, for your support and being here.
No,
Great
no worries.
to see everybody.
Did you want to stop the recording, or do you want me to do that?
Yes.